Welcome back to the Retirement Fiduciary Podcast, a place where we have authentic, no BS discussions about retirement planning, investment strategies, and wealth management. Whether you're approaching retirement or if you've already made work optional, this show is for you. Now, here's your host, Adam Koós, President, Portfolio Manager, and Senior Financial Advisor at Libertas Wealth Management Group at libertaswealth.com.
Let's just jump into my introduction here. We have a truly inspiring and somebody who I really admire in Sharad Mehta, the founder and CEO of REsimpli. His journey began with the frustration of juggling multiple software tools to run a single business, but instead of settling for inefficiency like so many of us do, he took matters into his own hands and created REsimpli, an all-in-one real estate software designed to help investors close more deals, save time, and cut marketing costs along the way. While his primary focus lies in Lake County and Indiana markets, he runs his innovative business from the sunny city of Carlsbad, California. And considering it is 32 degrees outside and with 35-mile-an-hour winds, I would take that all day long. So, Sharad, thanks so much for joining me. And I was on your podcast several months ago at this point, and it was time to do a home and home. So thanks for jumping on here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adam, for having me. And thank you for such a wonderful introduction.
For sure. Yeah. Let's start at the very beginning. Because I think every investor, every business owner, every real estate investor would love to hear, because there's not enough information out there on the internet. There's not enough books to read, podcasts. How'd you get started? You know, what was that switch that went off that made you decided, I'm going to get into real estate investing? What'd that look like?
I think it was like wanting freedom of time and money. So I was working as an accountant before I left my job. I was working for E&Y in their tax accounting group, which I loved the company. You know, I loved the people that I was working with. The pay was good, but I didn't like the work that I was doing. I just didn't like the fact that I didn't have control of my schedule. You know, I had to go into the office. I couldn't just take a day off whenever I wanted. So I started looking at all different things I could do. At one point, I wanted to be a day trader, which I lost a bunch of money. Wasn't for me. One point, I wanted to be a poker player. Absolutely sucked at it. And then came across real estate, like a book that kind of flipped things for me. The book was called Flip. So I started looking into that. And then from there, I read a book called Millionaire Real Estate Investor that I instantly gravitated towards it. Just made sense. And I was living in Chicago back then and started looking at investing. This was like 2010, right time, right place. Started buying properties in Indiana. They were like pretty awesome deal. I wish I had bought a lot more than I did.
How it always works.
You know, yeah, exactly. That's exactly how every investor is. But yeah, just kind of that's how I started. Wanted to have freedom of time and money.
So you got hooked, and then you got into it, and you started.
Yeah. The passive income, it's pretty addicting. Yeah.
Yeah.
The rental income that comes in, yeah, it's pretty addicting.
So you start building a successful business. You probably are working your butt off, but you're getting rewarded, fruitfully for it.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, this need to solve a problem comes up, and you start REsimpli. Why did you start it? What were the problems?
Yeah. So August 2015, my wife and we moved from Chicago to Carlsbad, where we live now. And at that point, I was thinking about 40, 50 flips a year. And I started looking at kind of how inefficient my business was. Because I was there locally, I didn't realize how much inefficiency, had crept in my business. So I started looking at some solution to be able to manage my business. I didn't find anything that I really liked. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to hire a couple of developers to create something for myself that I can use specific to my business. And that's kind of how it all started in like 2016 or 17. Yeah. I still remember to this day, I was sitting at the kitchen island with my wife, and I told her the idea. And I'm like, I think I'm just going to hire a couple of developers. It's just such a surreal moment. And then it's kind of led to what it is now. Yeah.
Now, what were some of the problems it solved?
I think for one, back then, and still now for the most part, like you had to, like Podio was the only CRM that everyone's using. Basically, you got this platform, and then you would go out and get a separate phone system. You would go out and get a website. You would go out and get, like your calling, texting, emailing were all these different platforms. And then if you needed to stack your data, like manage your marketing data, it would be separate. If you needed to do dialing, it would be separate. Then you would need a separate QuickBooks to manage your financial. It didn't appeal to me. Like, you know what? I'm just going to create something super simple that just works for my business, and everyone on my team could be on one software. So there were three important requirements that we had. One, it had to be an all-in-one software with everyone from my marketing team to my project management team. Everyone could be on one software. It had to be super simple to use, hence the name REsimpli. And then it had to give us really good KPIs that we could use to make data-driven decisions. So I come from an accounting background, so being able to make data-driven decision was very important. So that's kind of how the idea started.
Now, when you say that you've flipped, would you say as much as 40 houses in a year? Is that right?
I mean, since 2010, like in last 14 years, I've done about more than 800 deals. I do about 20-25 a year now, just because I've, recently keeps me pretty busy. But up until 2017, 18, I was like very heavily involved in flipping. And most of the deals I did was 2011 through 14, 15. And the majority of the deals were selling properties to overseas investors, primarily Australian investors.
Interesting.
Buying properties in US because of the favorable exchange rate.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
But how many of those properties over the years have been flips versus rentals that you held on to?
So I have 60 rentals for myself, and everything else has been primarily flip. Now, with flips, some flips, it's now lately we've been flipping to homeowners, but when the interest rates were lower and when they come down, majority of our flips are to other investors looking to buy cash flowing properties.
Okay.
I would say, I mean, we haven't tracked that, but I would say about 50-50 is a good balance that we look to have.
Out of curiosity, what was there a reason why you decided to sell those off for a profit now, as opposed to taking the long-term game plan of turning those into rentals as well and just keeping them for your own portfolio?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very, I guess when I started investing like this in 2010, right after the whole economy collapsed, because of over leverage. So I think that heavily influenced my decision. So my goal was to have I have 60 units, and then all of them are paid for free and clear except like 5 units. So it's very important for me to have a free and clear portfolio properties. So I could only buy as much as I could pay for. So for me, the goal was, as much as I hated selling these properties, but that was the only way I could make profit, take profit from those properties, and buy more, free and clear properties for myself.
I'm assuming
if
1031 that profit into all the other properties?
I mean, those were short-term flips.
Okay.
Yeah, those are all short-term flips. And that was another thing. I didn't have a very good accountant, to be honest. Now I finally found a good accountant. But yeah, like if my investment philosophy was where I was comfortable with that, I would probably have like 200-250 units, if not more. But
yeah,
I'm okay with not having that and just having peace of mind with, number of properties that I have. It works for me. It doesn't work for, mathematically, it doesn't make sense. I could make more money leveraging, but I'm okay with the cash flow that I have coming in. I have other, businesses, house flipping business REsimpli and other things, which just keeps me happy with kind of what I have going on.
Why would you say that your philosophy is such that you prefer paying these properties off and owning them free and clear, as opposed to leveraging and trying to grow the portfolio and have it pay for itself? Is there a reason you have that philosophy, or
just
opinion?
being conservative, right? If I don't want to have to stress about a vacancy and then, make compromises on who I'm putting it in my rental property, right? Just because I have a mortgage to make, right? I just didn't want to have that, because I was buying these properties at such a low price. Like back, I remember the first property I bought, I was all in for about 35,000. I think I bought it for 25, paid 10 for it, all in for 35, and I was getting $1,300 a month in rent. it's incredible. I mean, now that property is worth about 125 to 150, but back then I could afford to buy these properties for such a low price. And then initially I got loans on these properties. I had a private investor who was giving me loan for 7-year amortization, 2-year balloon. So I was just like aggressively paying them down. I was
Yeah.
just taking all the cash flow coming in from my properties, paying them down, and then just buying more properties from that. It fit my, I guess, subconsciously I knew that I was going to do something else also with my time. So I wanted to at least build enough a portfolio of rental properties that was just going to pay for my like lifestyle that I have. And then I could just not worry about that and go work on something else. Like if I knew I wasn't gonna do anything else, like this was kind of what the only thing I wanted to do, then I would just double down, leverage my properties and just be extremely efficient with that. But I guess subconsciously I knew just deep down I was gonna do something. I mean, I had a couple of other failed businesses in between. Like my dad and I, we started a used clothing business in Tanzania. He was living in Tanzania. We started a used clothing business, and then we started a gemstone business in Tanzania. We bought a mine in Tanzania, lost tons of
Wow.
money in both those businesses. So I was always doing something else, just this rental properties were a way to just make sure that my family was taken care of, where I could just go out and take, other entrepreneurial risks.
That makes sense. And how
Yeah.
many would you in the past? So I don't know if you want to say pre-COVID, after COVID, you pick the time frame. Over, call it the later 20 teens, early 2020s, how many of your properties were you flipping per year versus keeping?
Um, when I was a little bit, more actively involved in the business, I would say for every 4 to 5 properties I was flipping, I was keeping one for myself.
Okay.
Being clear, kind of that's the number that I had, like 4 to 5 would give me enough profit to go buy one and keep one for myself. So that's kind of the goal that I had.
Okay. So I'm getting to something here. I'm peppering you with these questions because I have
Yeah,
a
of
really
course.
I have a really specific question that I'm extremely curious about, because I think that flipping houses is something that I think sounds exciting to most people, but
Right.
it also sounds really risky. And that would be the feeling, I think, for most people if they were living in Indiana, flipping houses in Indiana, or for us in Columbus, Ohio, if we were buying properties in Columbus, Ohio and flipping them in Ohio, that would seem risky alone. You're in Carlsbad and you're doing this, or you've been doing it in the past in Indiana. I think of the employees, the staff, the contracted work, the risk. I mean, tell us how you were able to do that with
Yeah,
confidence?
just to add another layer of complexity to it, we actually don't have any employees in Indiana. So
All contracted.
so we just have our contractors, people that are actually working on these houses, but my project manager lives an hour north of me in California.
Oh, wow.
And I have 2 people in Philippines that kind of manage the acquisition side of it. And I have not been to Indiana to look at my flips in like 5 years, at least since beginning of COVID. I
Mhm.
haven't been to Indiana. And to be honest, I don't even know a lot of addresses of the properties that are I know what cities we're buying in, but I don't, if you gave me an address, random address, I would not even know. Um, I think like I read, I love reading, and there's like you go through these various seasons, in your life, and there's one book that I read called E-Myth Revisited
Mhm.
by Michael Gerber. I think that
Great
had a
book.
pretty big influence on kind of how I started thinking of my business. Like before that, I would look at all these properties that I was flipping, and in my mind, they all had to look unique, right? But once I read that book, I came to realization, okay, it's my idea that they need to look unique. We buy in one county made up of a bunch of these small cities. So I was like, okay, if I have one house in city A with the same finishes as one house in city B, it's like I know they look the same. But as long as they both look good, like people that are looking in city A, they don't know, this exact same looking house in city B. So I think once we started systemizing those things, putting systems and processes around it, it really helped us scale. For example, a lot of properties that we sell as turnkey, it's the exact same paint color, exact same flooring, exact same fixtures, faucets, anything you can imagine. Like it's not even a question of, hey, what do we want the house to look like? It's like we have a preset list of things. But on the flip, we switch it up a little bit just to make sure kind of what's trending. So we'll kind of do that. But even we don't change much from house to house, right? We'll do like a neutral beige or gray color, right? So I think putting systems around it where at the end of the day, like, the less decisions that you make in your life, just the more mental bandwidth you'll have. I'll give an example. I wear this navy blue t-shirt. I have 12 of these. I wear this every single day because I get up, I don't have to think about it. I just put it on and that's it. It's I have the exact same 3 pair of shorts that I bought, same color, everything same. That's what I wear. It's sort of become my uniform because it helps clear mental bandwidth for me from these smaller decisions. And then I can focus on like other things that actually bring value to me. Like if you ask me, what were you wearing when we did a podcast? I have no idea, right? Unless you showed up wearing something like just extraordinary, like a yellow suit. That's when I would remember. You know what I mean? Like these are things like I feel like we put too much attention to, like what are we wearing? What do I like? What t-shirt am I wearing? What jeans, shorts am I wearing? But nobody else cares about that kind of stuff.
That's
so
true.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, if I ask you what was I wearing, no idea.
I'm colorblind. I won't even remember what you were wearing.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. but that's the thing. Like taking decisions basically out of as many decisions we can take out of the business. Like that's kind of how we scale, remove the friction.
Okay. So let's just say for investors that are listening to this podcast episode, that they're mind blown, like I mean, I've known you for about a year now, but I mean, they're mind blown listening to you say that you've, got 60 properties, most of which, all but 5, you own free and clear, bringing you passive income for you and your family. There was a time when you were flipping 40 to 50 properties per year, and you're doing it out of state with a project manager who lives north of you and 2 people in another country helping you with the deals. The question they've all got to be asking themselves is, how is he doing this? So that's the question. Like, how are you doing it?
Look, I come from an accounting background. So for me, everything comes down to the numbers, right? It just like, that's how I look at it. If there are other people like flipping in an area or investing in an area, then that means there's some potential. Right? The next thing that comes is, okay, if I want to go in, what's my risk appetite for this? Right? And then the biggest mistake you can make as an investor is overpay for a property. Just like once you've overpaid, there's nothing you can do. Like if you pay $200,000 for $100,000 house, there's nothing you cannot go back to the seller and return it. You cannot find someone else to pay you $250 or $200 for that house, so you break even. So I think just making your decision based on the numbers. So for us, we have a local agent that we work with. It's the same agent that we work with who's listing our property. So let's say we do a lot of direct to seller marketing. We do direct mail, cold calling, PPC. So a lead comes in, Jay, who's based in Philippines, he takes the call. He'll talk to the seller on like basically asking them, questions like the pre-qualification question that we have, like, hey, why are you looking to sell? What's your motivation? Like, and then the next thing would be, we'll set up an appointment for a contractor to go look at the house. So while we'll set up an appointment, then we will have our agent in the meantime give us a comms on that property. If we were to flip or if we were to sell it to an investor, what would the average selling price would be? Let's say it comes to 200,000. And then our contractor would go look at the house, take pictures, and tell us how much it would cost to fix that house if we were flipping it or if we were selling it to an investor. So it'll give us 2 numbers, right? So let's say the exit is 200 and then the resale price is 50,000. So we just basically take 200,000, multiply that 70%, 140, and subtract the 50,000 rehab. So our max offer would be 90,000. So it's just all based on numbers.
I got you.
So we have our agent involved who's telling us how much we can sell the property for. Then we have our contractor who's telling us how much it's going to cost to fix that house. Then we just work backwards on what's the max we can pay for that house. Because we have the contractor, so we're not coming up with a number on how much we think it's going to cost. It's the contractor who's actually going to work on that house, giving us a number. And then it's the agent who's going to list the house, telling us how much we can sell for. And then it just, as long as we buy for the right price and we didn't underestimate the rehab number and we didn't overestimate the selling number, then we're going to make profit on that deal.
And I assume that a lot of this comes down to relationships as well, right? Having good relationships with the people that you can trust. That's
100%. 100%.
Realtor,
yeah.
contractor.
Yeah. I mean, of course, we have to rely on that agent to give us the right number. We don't want an agent who just to get a listing for herself is giving us like a high number, right? Instead of, let's say 200, she say, oh, you can sell it for 250 because the house sold for 250, which is a totally different house from ours. And then, when we go to list it, it's like, you said 250, like we're getting 200. We, instead of paying 90, we paid, 130 for the house. And there's no money for us to make. So, I mean, that's something, relationship. Same thing with the contractor. He, if he said 50 just to get for us to buy the house, but it's actually going to be 75. We're not going to work with the contractor after that.
Okay. So I know that, I mean, everything we're talking about just kind of speaks more to the complexity of doing what you do and building what you've built. You have, a property management company, I know. You've got, REsimpli, which that's my next question here. But it takes, team members that you have to hire to scale the business, which you've talked about. Trust, relationships, using a numbers-based approach. That all makes sense to me. From there, though, you've got all these problems that come up when you run a business like this, right? You've got the property management we just talked about. We've got the interaction between the team members, the marketing part of it that you talked about a second ago. And then you've got the terrible T's, right? Toilets, tenants, and trash. So when you built REsimpli, tell me about how that helps people. How does it look on the front end? What does it do for the consumer that uses it? How does it make life easier?
Yeah, so it's built for people that are buying off-market properties. Like instead of buying from MLS, they want to get better deal and they're buying off-market. And it's built for investors that are doing minimum like 3 to 4 deals a year, buying off-market. I think that's where it makes sense. So it helps them with everything from marketing all the way up to doing their accounting. So everything that you can imagine in between, like from pulling lists, skip tracing to get the phone numbers and email addresses of your marketing list, like being able to call, text, and email them, then manage your leads in the platform. Then once you have a property under contract, you can even pull a list of other investors in the area if you want to wholesale the deal. If you don't want to close on it, you want to pass it on to another investor and make a little bit of money, you can do that. You can build your biases, you can get your website all built in within REsimpli, and then you can manage all your contacts, your contractors, lenders, anyone within REsimpli, and then even do your bookkeeping within an accounting within REsimpli. Like I haven't used QuickBooks in my business for like 3 years now. I do everything in REsimpli for my business.
That's saying a lot. I mean, QuickBooks is a beast of a product.
Yeah.
So to say that your software is doing that.
Yeah, we have many other investors that don't use QuickBooks and just use REsimpli for their bookkeeping and accounting side of business.
I mean, my understanding is it's pretty reasonably priced too. I mean, if for somebody who wants to get started, it almost seems like you can take your current business, if you're a current investor and you've kind of been around the block, then you can convert everything over, save yourself a ton of time and do it for a pretty low cost. But it seems that even somebody coming out of the gate who's just trying to get started it's almost like a turnkey process, no?
It is. I mean, the software is a turnkey process, but it's not gonna, close the deal for you. It is a turnkey process, but the investor needs to have, I think everything comes down to like consistency. Like I've looked at investors in our platform that are consistently doing deals versus the ones that are not. Like it just comes down to people that are doing deals, and have made a business out of it, are consistent. They're consistently marketing. They have a consistent follow process. They're consistently tracking their KPIs. that's what it comes down to. It's like, the fundamentals of the business are pretty straightforward. Like it's like going to the gym. There's like losing weight. There's like two variables that you need to control, like eat healthy and go to gym. Right? That's pretty much it. There's nothing more complicated to it. Yes, there's like you can do keto diet, vegan diet, or whatnot, but it just comes down to, are you eating healthy and are you working out? As long as you're doing that, it's just a matter of time. Like some people will have higher intensity than others, and then they'll lose, let's say, 50 pounds in 6 months. And some people will just, have a lower intensity. So they might lose 50 pounds in 2 years. But the key, common denominator is consistency. It's the same thing in the business. As long as you're consistently doing things that work in business, it just, there's no two ways about it that you'll be successful. But if you do marketing 1 month, you don't get anything and you give up, and you start 3 months later, you do the same thing, you're not going to get anything. It's like you go to gym one day and you're expecting to have six pack. It's not going to happen. It's just like it's a process that you have to follow day in, day out, every single day, and just be consistent with it.
I think it's something that businesses really struggle with and it's a pet peeve of mine. I strongly believe that any marketing needs to be given a lot of time. I would say minimum 6 to 9 months to see if it works.
100%.
Really, a year, honestly, to see some results. You can't just sit there and say, well, I'm going to see how this works for a couple months and go, oh, I got nothing out of it. And then now you really wasted your money.
Right.
And by the way, I think that's that's one of the biggest reasons so many businesses fail, is they just don't have the patience, or maybe they didn't have the capital up front to make it happen. But looking at REsimpli again, if somebody's using another piece of software, or some other kind of solution, a competitor of yours, let's just say, my understanding is you'll actually help them move over to your software. And I love that on your website you say that there is no setup fee because it's uncool.
Right. Yeah, there's no setup fee. We'll help them switch over from any platform to REsimpli. At this point, we help investors switch over from like any possible software you can imagine. Yeah, so we help them with that. Any questions they have on kind of some best practices or whatnot, we get all of that taken care of for them.
Speaking of best practices, what would you say are your favorite? Maybe you can give me 1 or 3. How's that? So, but not 2. So, what are your 1 or 3 favorite best practices based on all the time you've had and all the lessons you've learned in building such a great portfolio yourself and then building the software? What advice would you give other people in terms of best practices?
I think for one, be clear about why you are getting in the business, and it's not get rich quick scheme. No matter how many YouTube videos you watch, and if someone says I can show you how to make $50,000 in 10 days, you may get lucky. It may happen. You may cold call someone today, and you just happen to reach that person at the right time. Just you make your first call and someone is like ready to sell because they're just in that situation, you end up making. Could happen, but that's not what the expectation should be. I think for me, it really comes down to being consistent, Adam. Like I can't think of anything else than if you're doing the right thing consistently, like you will be successful. Like there's like no other way. It's like there's no two ways about it. Like you will be successful if you're doing the right thing consistently. Like if you're eating healthy, working out, you will get in better shape. Like there's like it's not possible to not do that. The same thing in business. If you're consistently marketing, consistently following up, consistently tracking your numbers and making data-driven decisions, you will have a successful business.
Oh, that makes sense. Consistency, doing a lot of the same things consistently over time, and then just being patient. Avoiding that roller coaster, I guess. What about these days? Final question for you. I bet you there's some people that are thinking, well, interest rates are high. Yeah, they're coming down, but they're still high. It's too hard to buy rental properties or flips for that matter today because interest rates are so high and it's just too hard to do it. What would you say to them?
I mean, you just have to adjust your numbers, right? Interest rate is high, but people are still buying deals. Like we bought 11 unit property this year at like the peak of the highest interest rate. So if the interest rate is high, just because, let's say, even if the interest rate goes to 10,000 or 10%, but you are able to get a property for $100,000 that's rented for, let's say, I'm just making up $2,000 a month. Would you buy it or no? Even if it's 10%, right?
Sure.
Like that's interest rate is not the only determining factor. Like interest rate just tells you how much your payment is going to be, but then you can just start with, okay, this is the max I want to pay in terms of whatever my mortgage. This is how much the cash flow I want to have, and then just work the number backwards and make offers. Like make offers. You never know who's going through what situation. Like the first property I bought for $25,000, it was listed for $65,000 on the market, but I was just super conservative, and my max number was 25. I started with 20, and then we ended up negotiating at 25. So you never know what someone is going through, but the only way to find out is to make an offer. Like the only way to get a deal is to go out and make an offer. What's the worst that's going to happen? Someone is going to say no. So what? Like just move on to the other one. Just keep going. Like if you make enough offers, you will get a deal. If you don't, then there's nothing. No one is going to be coming down to help you.
It's like the fact that in Major League Baseball, if you can hit the ball 3 out of 10 times, you get invited to the All-Star game, right?
Right.
But
exactly.
in this game of real estate, it's just how many times do you want to go up to the plate? You can hit the ball 1 out of 10 times, and if you just go up to the plate and swing the bat more than everybody else, then you'll be successful.
Yeah, I was just putting together. I'm going to a mastermind this weekend, and I was putting together a presentation. Just on average, like 1.5% of the leads that come in convert into an actual deal.
Wow.
Right? So like you can imagine 1.5% of all the leads that come in. So I mean, these are, so we call lead anyone that even calls in and say, hey, take me off the list. Like, don't ever call me. Like it just, that's an easy way for us to say this is a lead. Otherwise that gets very subjective. So imagine like 1.5%. I think that comes to like 75 leads in order to get a deal. So just, if you start with that, I mean, some investors are going to do better, but on average, it comes down to 1.5%. So if you can like keep that number in mind and even like be conservative, let's say 100, you need 100 leads. So just back into that number and see what you need to do to get to 100 leads, and then have a process on the back end to make sure. And then it comes to, I think investors make offers on 10% of the leads that come in, and 15% of those offers convert into a deal. Wow. So you kind of know that, 15% of the offers that you'll make will convert into a deal eventually. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you go into that armed with that knowledge, it's great information. So you're not disappointed, you're not impatient.
Yeah, exactly. I was talking to someone, I forgot, but they had a very interesting like point of view on this. They said, okay, I know I need to make like 10 offers before I get a deal. So every time I get a rejection, I'm excited because that means I'm one offer closer to my deal now.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's how you kind of, if you start thinking about it, the more rejections you're getting, that means the closer you are to your end goal. And I thought that was a pretty brilliant way to think about it.
Yep. Just a numbers game. It's like
it is a numbers game. Yeah.
Got to get excited about the no's now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Get excited about the no's. So you get, I've gotten like 8 no's. I need 1 more before I get the deal, Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to be our time for the day. If you'd like to get a hold of Sharad, you can find him on LinkedIn. You can also go to their website at REsimpli.com. That's RES as in Sam, IM as in Mary, PLI.com. Everything will be in the show notes below on YouTube, as well as Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you're looking for the link. And you'll also find all contact information as well. Just in case you're listening to this in the car or on the treadmill, you can always come back to it and check it out. But as I always say, there's thousands of podcasts out there, and you chose to give ours a listen today. So thank you so much for joining in, and we'll see you next time.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you like a second opinion on your retirement plan or investment strategy, please head over to libertaswealth.com. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as legal, financial, tax, or as the basis for investment decisions. Always consult a certified financial planner or a fee-only fiduciary advisor before acting on any ideas discussed.